a few days to almost, mellow down and to assess how things went. How would you reflect on BETWAY SA20 season 2?
Oh, thanks, Laurent, throwing me in the deep end. Firstly, morning, everyone. Thanks for making the time to join us today. Yeah, I think for us, after a really manic 6 weeks, it's all a bit fuzzy still. It will obviously take us some time to collate and collect all the data. But by all accounts, I think throughout the season that we've grown. I think for us, the season was a success. There were obviously a lot of question marks around building into season 2, whether we could recreate or get stronger. And I think that we've done that. I think a couple of the highlights for me was that I think the cricket, was, probably the biggest, strength on season 1. Some of the performances that were put in, some of the, individual and team performances. I think we saw some players that have been bubbling under the surface in South African cricket for a while really come to the fore, and I think that was exciting. As always, as I've said throughout a number of interviews that I've done, it will never get old, or you can never take for granted that the amount of people that came out in the stadiums and turned on the tellies. I think that for me is another huge success and something that's just really incredible to experience. So I think from that perspective, season 2, was a success. We've obviously got to take some time now to get all the sort of stuff collated and the data, but I think the feedback that we've received from players, from teams, from fans has been extremely positive.
Thanks. Nathan, you may go.
Thank you very much, Lerato. Graeme, firstly, congratulations with another successful tournament. I've just got 2 questions, but I'll go with one for now. Commissioner, I just want to ask, how's your relationship with currently with the CSA? Reason why I ask is around the Proteas outgoing series to New Zealand clashing with the SA20. Have you been talking to them so these situations don't happen in the future?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've touched on those things. I mean, it's a very difficult subject for me to talk about, but it's something that should never happen. Engagements on next year's scheduling is already happening. We did meet with CSA in March last year around this stuff, so it's just something that we've got to be better at and make sure it doesn't happen again.
Excuse me, can everybody please just make sure they're on mute? Michael. Thanks, Johan. You can go next.
Hi, Graeme. I just want to double check next season using some other grounds as well, and also when will the expansion to maybe 8 teams?
Hey, Johan. Johan, so when the tournament was built, there was a commitment of 5 years to the teams that have invested in South African cricket. I think for us, obviously, the 6 stadiums were the 6 stadiums that the teams chose to buy into and to own. So I think that'll always be the priority. I think for us, the growth conversation is one that we always have behind the scenes. Growth in South Africa, growth into Africa is something that we will look at. I think for us also, whether we look at fan parks or taking a game to a different region, that's something that we'll in our strat sessions and debrief sessions and conversations with Cricket South Africa and our board, those are discussions that definitely will happen.
Keenan.
Thank you, Lerato. Hi, Graeme. Just on the playoff system, the SA20 obviously is emulating the IPL with the way that works. Firstly, is that set in stone for future seasons? And secondly, are there plans underway to ensure that the final and to a certain extent the playoffs are played at home venues in the future? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's in theory it's a great concept. We're a very quick tournament. I mean, if if you just think about the fact that Sunrise is in the top of the league in the last game of the league phase, it's very difficult to move this entire machine to that venue with one day and sell tickets and brand and get everything sorted. So, I mean, it is a challenge. I mean, we'll always look to see how we can improve the tournament. I think the highlights for us is that we, even with neutral venues, the crowds were great. That's something that an element of discussion we'll definitely have. But it's just an understanding of in one day, how do you move this entire ship? Which is a very sort of big ship to move, sell tickets, rebrand. So I guess those conversations, and for us, I think we're quite at a point at BETWAY SA20 where we've got to always look to improve every year, and that certainly will be a part of the discussions.
And sorry, is the playoff system that was implemented this season, is that set in stone for the future seasons to come?
Yes, I think that's set in stone. I think for me, I think the system worked well. There's with the 16 tournament, it certainly does put an emphasis and give an advantage to the teams that have played the best in the league phase. Certainly 1 and 2, it gives you some extra bites at the cherry to get into the final. And I think the fact that we had the 2 best teams in the tournament there spoke to that system. So I think the four game playoff will be there now. We'll be a 34-game competition for at least the next few years.
Thank you.
Stuart, then Simnikiwe.
Thanks, Lerato. Hello, Graeme. I was just on another topic regarding the SA20, the integrity of the comp with kind of overseas players that come and go, and I'm thinking here of Puran and Stoinis, I guess, with the bigger examples here. Are you concerned at all that affects the integrity of the tournament with guys that are only playing half of it and then leaving, and it becomes then difficult for fans to follow? And is there also, I guess, related to that, a way of halting players and franchises from calling guys in for just one game or just the playoff part of it, like Durban did with Agar?
Yeah, it's very difficult, Stuart. I mean, I think, if you take a step back, we are a majority-based South African league. The majority of our players in playing 11s, and I think, the investment back in South African cricket is that. I think for me, the improvement in the league this year was seeing the standard of the South African players really grow. I think we're blessed to be able to attract now, in a conversation where the top international talent wants to be in South Africa and playing, So I think that's, if you think about that growth in 2 years, I remember having conversations where, when we were building SA20, that, there was no confidence in South African cricket that we would be able to pull it off at this level. So I think the fact that we've been able to attract the top international talent, I think FTPs are tough. I mean, Noor Ahmed got pulled out on the day of the day before the first knockout game by Afghanistan. He was selected. So it's a very, FTPs are challenged, and it's a debate in the world game. But I think if we take a step back and we look at what's been created in 2 years, I think it's amazing. We've gone from a place where international talent hasn't backed our league to the point where they want to be a part of it, and our South African crop of players in 2 years has really developed. So there's always things that we can improve in the world game. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be debated, but I think from our perspective in 2 years, I look at kind of the positive elements of that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lerato. How's it, Graeme? Just one question regarding the scheduling. With the Champions Trophy scheduled to start in February next year, is that likely to affect the SA20 scheduling in return?
Yeah, I mean, look, absolutely. I mean, we will have to consider everything, but the Champions Trophy dates are still not cast in stone. We'll work with the RCC and CSA. I mean, there's already a lot of communication happening behind the scenes in terms of scheduling. So yeah, we'll have to work with that in season 3. And once we've got confirmed information, then you can make informed decisions. Right now, there's no actual confirmed dates. When does the support period start? So we've got to get all that information first and then make informed decisions.
Thank you.
Feroz and then Telford.
Thanks. Hi, Graeme. Just to follow up on Stuart's question, there's been a lot of chatter around, especially guys who went to the ILT20 because obviously they've got an extra week. And one of the suggestions that's been made is a limitation on NOCs, and also that there has to be some kind of cooling off period between playing in two different leagues. What do you think of that? Would you like to see something like that put in place?
You know, like I think most of your main members, it works okay. I think that the challenge is ILT, you know, consuming 9-10 players per playing 11 plus squad members. It's just the amount of players that is required there to keep that ship moving is the challenge. You know, I think that you probably wouldn't see it at the level that you're discussing it now if that wasn't the case. If it was just 3 or 4 players per team, you know, you know, with the FDP challenges and other stuff that goes on, you probably wouldn't have this turnover of players at the level that you're talking about. I don't know. You know, it's very difficult to restrict talent. You know, I think the NOC discussion in itself, you know, is a challenge for the world game. So there's a lot of challenges to saying I'm going to restrict your movement. I think it's way more complicated than just me answering you now behind the scenes legally and with what goes on.
I think I'm up next, am I?
Hi, Telford.
How's it, Graeme?
Yes.
Thanks, Lorato. Graeme, I realize that now your kind of cricketing identity is very much linked with this tournament. But of course, the test team, which you led so well and so long through, probably its best time, is struggling right now. And I just wondered at a personal level, as someone who's connected to both of these things, how does it make you feel really that the test team is struggling and that, you know, the SA20 is a part of that, often unfairly maligned in that sense? You know, just as a personal, as a guy, as a cricketer, as a captain of that test team, how does it make you feel?
Yeah, Telford, I mean, look, my job is to build and make SA20 a success, but you know, my love for Test cricket hasn't gone away. My care for it. You know, I sit on the MCC Cricket Committee. We debated at length 2 weeks ago. You know, I think the challenges are much deeper than just this scheduling issue for Test cricket. You know, I think, you know, the funding, how the models work. I mean, we saw Johnny Grave came out and said, you know, after an incredible Test win, but they lost over $1 million, you know, on that trip. You know, how does the revenue work between bilaterals? You know, the distributions, all these things in the game, you know, need to be, you know, spoken about and chatted about to keep Test cricket strong. This scheduling issue I've said from the start, should never have happened. It's disappointing. It's crazy that it happened. You know, unfortunately, it is what it is. And, you know, I think for us, our Test cricket has been a challenge for a long time, performance-wise. And I'd love to see that team strong again and performing well. But yeah, I think, you know, like everyone, we're disappointed at what's happened, and you know, we've got to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Thank you.
Nathan?
Thank you again, Lorato. Graeme, how would you assess the level of cricket from the locally based players compared to the overseas based players who featured this season?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I think the big growth for me that I saw this season was the standard of the local talent. You know, I said there's a tier of players that maybe were bubbling under the surface at domestic level for a long time. We saw that really step up. You know, like seeing like a Neil Bartman this year, the way that he performed, I think was one of, like, you know, the highlights. And hopefully every year that, you know, the strength of the competition is going to be that local base gets stronger and stronger and stronger. We've seen it at the IPL. And then it's the interactions with the international talent, the stars that come in, you know, competing. You know, I think Josh Butler's had an outstanding, you know, 2 seasons. There's been a number of players that have performed well, but you know, for me, you know, the base will always be the South African players, and seeing that standard go from strength to strength every year will really keep the standard of the tournament strong. And then hopefully, we will be able to attract in years to come, good quality around that can just add, extra sort of strength to the tournament.
Zahir, and then for the
How's it, Graham? Just in terms of the surfaces that we played on, we saw plenty of runs this tournament. But when you go back to South African domestic competitions, the surfaces haven't produced runs like this. Even in test matches, just what do you attribute the differences to in terms of surfaces for SA20, in terms of surfaces the rest of the time?
Look, I think surfaces in South Africa are a challenge, and I think like stadium maintenance, pitch and field maintenance is a key part of, keeping our pitches good. I mean, with the run up to, the 27 World Cup, I think all these things need to be put on the table to see how we can, consistently improve the standards of our stadiums and standards of our, our pitches and our outfields. I think that's something that, we certainly work hard on behind the scenes with Cricket South Africa. Groundsman education, groundsman support, being in the detail for us is hugely important. We spend hours and hours on the build up to these pitches. We've got a team that's on the ground, venue managers, Stephen Cook is there working with the groundsman, building up, sorting surfaces. So it's for us, it's a consistent effort to make sure that the standard of our tournaments are level. I still think pitches can get better, even for us and across the board. So, that's something that we'll work with Cricket South Africa on to keep improving the game. And I think pitches are a big part of that.
For those?
Graeme, you mentioned the sitting on the MCC, and I know that the meeting took place during the tournament, and you guys put out that list of recommendations. One of those was obviously around funding. Do you feel that there's a willingness for that to be accepted, and that we're going to see more equal distribution of resources? Or, how much pressure, maybe pressure is not the right word, how much do you think the MCC committee can do to make these things happen?
Yeah, I think it's got a respected voice. Obviously, these discussions need to happen at bilateral level with, CEOs, and then obviously with the ICC. On the funding, I think everyone looks at the ICC distribution, which has grown. I think the ICC have done an incredible job, but they've also got an event-based approach, which has increased revenues and distribution, and you can debate that distribution. But, for example, Johnny Graves says, to go to Australia, you don't earn a cent of revenue, and it costs you over $1 million to have your team there. As for a few nations, that becomes unaffordable over time. And the way that the model works is, you only earn money really when you're hosting tours. And I think India play more cricket than anybody else, and they try and, with touring, a lot of teams earn good revenue. But like the modeling of how those sort of shared revenues need to improve, so that I guess outside the top three nations, how does a South Africa or West Indies keep all three formats strong?
Stuart?
Thanks, Lerato. Graeme, just in discussion with the owners at the Super Kings, one of the things they mentioned was that they felt that that season 2 of SA20 was going to be something that they saw it as kind of stabilizing, building on what they had achieved in season 1. I know you've just wrapped up the season and you're still trying to collate all the information, but in looking at how season 2 unfolded, what areas of growth do you see for the competition in the next 3 years, and specifically stuff you'd like to see happen next year?
Yeah, sure. I think, scaling is always tough, but, for us, I think our ambitions have been very clear. I think, it's biggest league outside India, but we also, biggest #1 sports and entertainment brand in South Africa. I think if you come to our stadium, you can see that it's a whole experience for fans there. I think for us, every year, it's about how do we grow? How do we get better? What can we learn? What are the aspects of season 2 that didn't work well, and what did work well? And, these reviews and then strategy sessions are important. I think absolutely no doubt this year, and we've seen initial numbers, there's been a huge amount of growth. I mean, we've already touched on, I think, some of the cricket, the stats are showing, the cricket improved dramatically from season 1. Crowd attendance, even with, challenges over weather, we grew, all the TV viewership numbers look up globally and locally. And I think the amount of people that we touched this season in terms of interacting with BETWAY SA20 has grown dramatically. So, for us, I think year on year, it's how we can improve and not rest on our laurels and make sure that we, I think in 2 years, as I said to an earlier question, the conversation is entirely changed. BETWAY SA20 is now at the forefront of all these conversations. Yes, there's debate. I mean, debate is good. Player debate, bilateral debate, all the stuff that's hopefully going to improve the game. But the fact is that we're now part of the conversation, and that wasn't there 2 years ago.
Thanks, Graeme. We're just going to wrap up Zahir, and then we'll take the last couple, please.
Graeme, you speak about the biggest league outside of India. The IPL was basically built on MI and CSK success. They obviously haven't done very well here. MI finishing last in 2 seasons. Is that something that as a commissioner concerns you, that the so-called bigger teams are not getting to the playoffs and not, so from a brand perspective?
I mean, I as league commissioner, I have to remain neutral. I have daily interactions with all 6 teams, and I know how competitive they all are. You mentioned 2 teams there that are massive franchises, and I can guarantee you that not competing at the levels they want to compete is not something they'll be proud of. They'll be, behind the scenes looking at every way that they could possibly improve. So, for me, that's a good thing that, you've got a competition next year where, 2 of your biggest teams are, got the bit between their teeth and really want to, improve their performances. So that for me will just lift the standard of the cricket next year. We've got 6 teams that have, equal spend on salary caps, equal sort of competitive nature, the way that they look after players, the way that they, invest in coaching, medical. So I just see that hopefully that'll be a positive next year, that they'll come out and really look to put things right.